Atem nitzavim hayom. You stand this day, all of you, before Adonai your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officials, the entire body of Israel, your children, your wives, even the stranger within your camp, from wood chopper to water drawer, to enter into the covenant of Adonai your God. Those are the powerful opening words of Parshat Nitzavim, which we read each year on the Shabbat preceding Rosh Hashanah, and again at Yom Kippur morning services in Reform congregations around the world. But as you may know, Parshat Nitzavim is not actually the traditional Torah portion for Yom Kippur morning. That distinction goes to Acharei Mot, which details the rituals required for the proper observance of Yom Kippur. Given its subject matter, it's easy to see why Acharei Mot is a logical choice for Yom Kippur, even though very few of the practices it describes are still observed today. It is less obvious why we would replace it with Nitzavim, in which Moses adjures the Israelites to remember their covenant with God, insists that the Torah is readily accessible to all, and implores the people to choose life by choosing to remain faithful to the covenant and the Torah. These are stirring and important ideas to be sure. But why choose them to supplant the more traditional reading about how to observe Yom Kippur? In a nutshell, the early reformers wanted to show the primacy of ethical conduct that is articulated in Nitzavim over ritual atonement and Acharei Mot. The themes of personal and communal freedom and responsibility, among others, that are explored in Nitzavim have enduring relevance and resonance for us, especially during the High Holy Days. As Reformed Jews, who are generally more concerned with upholding the values that underpin the mitzvot than with the commandments themselves, it makes sense for us to choose a Torah portion like Nitzavim over the more arcane and difficult Acharei Mot. I fully support our movement's choice, and yet I do miss the presence of Acharei Mot in our Yom Kippur services. I miss it because while the rituals it describes are not ones I would choose to perform, I am moved by the rich symbolism they convey. It seems to me that Acharei Mot has just as much to teach us today as Nitzavim does, though we may need to dig a little deeper to unearth its wisdom. Together, these two parshiot teach powerful lessons about the nature of inclusion. This is a subject close to my heart. Having moved a number of times before finally settling in San Antonio, I understand what it feels like to be on the outside looking in. Over time, we made friends, settled in, participated actively in the synagogue, but I've never forgotten that feeling of being uprooted and transported to a strange place, of being lost in a sea of unfamiliar faces. This is especially difficult for an extreme introvert such as myself. And I also know firsthand how affirming it can be to be warmly welcomed into a new community, as we were welcomed when we joined the formal Temple Chai. And knowing that welcoming newcomers is not always easy, especially when we do not yet know who they are and what they need, I'm so proud of Congregation Shalom members for always doing just that, welcoming newcomers warmly and making them feel welcome and part of our extended family. Inclusion is essential, and it is challenging. Both Nitzavim and Acharei Mot explore these truths. They complement each other, offering very different but equally compelling cases for striving to be inclusive, while at the same highlighting some of the challenges that ideal poses for us. In Nitzavim, we see a clear focus on inclusion and empowerment. Moses insists that the Torah, relationship with God, a life of goodness and meaning, all of these are ours for the taking. He famously declares, Lo bashamayim hi. What I am telling you is not hidden from you or far away. It is not up in the heavens or way out across the sea. It is near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, so that you can do it. It's an inspiring message that the Torah and mitzvot are available to us all and can guide us toward better, more satisfying lives. On the surface, Nitzavim seems to be conveying this message in a radically inclusive way. Moses explicitly states that his words apply to everyone, high-up officials and menial laborers, men, women, and children, even the stranger in the midst of the camp. All are invited to participate in God's covenant and to reap its rewards. But is Moses really being all that inclusive? A deeper examination of the text calls that into question. It's true that Moses mentions many groups of people, but we must ask, to whom is he actually speaking? All of those people are described using the word your, as in your women, your children, your stranger in your camp, suggesting that they all belong to someone who is you. But who is this you? We can answer this question by process of elimination. Moses singles out officials, but not the people they represent. Women and children, but not men. Strangers, but not native citizens. In other words, it seems most likely that Moses is addressing the rank and file adult men of Israel. They are the ones who are actually being addressed, and everyone else is being spoken about. Now, this is not to say that Nitzavim is not inclusive for mentioning all those people. It is, and much more so than many parts of the Torah. But it is not quite as inclusive as it looks on the surface. The reality is, as usual, more complicated. Inclusion is also complicated. Even when we want to be inclusive, and we try to be, it's hard to get it right. Imagine, for example, that we are throwing our child a birthday party at an indoor trampoline park, and we decide to invite their entire class rather than just their close friends, so that no one will feel left out. Then we discover that one of their classmates has physical mobility challenges that makes it impossible for them to participate. We haven't done anything wrong by inviting them. We have tried to do something right, but we have missed something important, and in doing so, we have inadvertently made someone feel excluded and singled out. Of course, it is impossible to perfectly anticipate everything that might make someone feel excluded. But this example highlights the importance of gathering as much information as we can about the people in and around our own communities, ideally from those people themselves, and using what we learn to make the most inclusive choices possible. To be truly inclusive, we must continually ask ourselves who we might be leaving out, and be willing to admit to and learn from our mistakes. On the other hand, there are times when the last thing we want is to be inclusive, or perhaps I should say, to be included. I'm thinking of times when something goes wrong, and our first instinct is to separate ourselves and avoid blame, often by assigning it to someone else. In the words of the ancient Roman philosopher Tacitus, victory is claimed by all, failure by one alone. When people fail or do wrong, most of us tend to run the other way. This is where the traditional Torah reading for Yom Kippur morning comes in. In Acharei Mot, we learned that the central ritual of Yom Kippur involves taking 2 male goats and casting lots, essentially leaving it up to chance to decide which goat will be offered up as a sacrifice to God. Interestingly, though, that goat is considered to be the lucky goat. The unlucky goat is the one upon whom the high priest symbolically places all the sins of the community, and who is then sent away to wander in the wilderness and also, presumably, to die. This ritual is the origin of the term scapegoat, someone we all unfairly blame so that we don't have to blame ourselves or each other. It surely seems cruel and unfair to pile up all of our sins onto one goat and banish it, let alone sacrifice the other goat, which I suspect is part of why Reformed Jews don't read this text on Yom Kippur. When you look at this ritual from the people's perspective, it is liberating. Not only is each person able to rid themselves of their sins, but they also combine them with everyone else's sins, so that they become one undifferentiated mass of sin that can no longer be connected to any one person. Instead, we all share equally in all of them. In this way, Acharei Mot is even more inclusive than Nitzavim. It gives no more or less weight to any one individual's sins, or to the pardon they are granted after the ritual is complete. That is the part of the scapegoat ritual that I actually like. It forces us to think about our wrongdoings as communal rather than individual, and to understand that just as society has some responsibility when we do something wrong, so too do we bear some responsibility when our society or a member of it does something wrong. The confessional prayers we say on Yom Kippur reflect this understanding.